So before I get started, I saw this in Paul's letter to the Galatians. God is not mocked. And in the Gospel of Lydia Rutherford, it is written, God shall not mock thy wife. It's in there somewhere. Back in the early 1990s, when Lydia and I were attending St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Shelbyville, Indiana, I was a newly commissioned Christian education director. And then Father Bill Chasen said to me, oh, by the way, I want you to organize a vacation Bible school this coming summer. Now, St. Luke's, they had a big parish hall and lots of classrooms. And they had a daycare that was housed in the parish hall and those classrooms. Carol's kids, and our kids attended it. So the idea was that we would have this vacation Bible school, and our kids could come to it, but we had a captive audience in the kids of the daycare. And it was touted as a Christian daycare, and so they were happy to have the vacation Bible school. And not knowing what I was doing, I went out and I found what I call a canned vacation Bible school with step-by-step instructions and all the materials you need to buy to do it and so on. And it also didn't hurt that I have a creative mind to go along with it and the heart of a teacher. I had a mix of recruits and volunteers. I had 2 teachers who were helpers, elementary school teachers. But I had 2 or 3 eager volunteers who had never taught a Sunday school and never done a VBS before. So my job was to basically give the teachers the equipment they needed and get out of their way, but also to equip those and instruct those 2 or 3 volunteers who had no idea what they were getting into, and to help plan in the day-to-day schedule of the VBS. But most of all, to provide reassurance to them that they would survive. In today's gospel reading, Jesus says, I have given you authority to tread on snakes and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will hurt you. Well, I tell you, those little kids were quite the snakes and scorpions. Then it wasn't but a few years later in my life that I got this crazy idea to go to seminary and become a priest. I learned the Bible, theology, worship and music, and canon law. What I didn't learn was plumbing, electrical work, gardening, how to fix office copiers, and how to live stream worship services on Facebook. And most of all, they didn't teach me how to make church members do what I wanted them to do. Notice that in our gospel reading today, it says Jesus appointed the 72 to go on this mission trip. He didn't ask for volunteers. It was early on in my ministry here, and Barry Cox was on the vestry. And he was very frustrated with my collaborative leadership style. And he said to me, why can't you just make people do things? And my response to Barry was, well, you have the luxury of hiring and firing workers. When you say jump, they say how high because they want to earn a paycheck. And I have to say pretty please and thank you and give out attaboys and attagals. But I'm not alone in this problem, and St. John's isn't any different from any other church in this regard. There are volumes of books that have been written on how to mobilize church volunteers, and they make great doorstops. Times have changed. Even as far back as the 1970s, people committed to things. Social and civic organizations flourished, and so did the church. Now, those same organizations are struggling for membership, and so are many churches. What has changed drastically is people's attention span or better said, their willingness to make long-term commitments. Church consultant and pastor Ken Callahan hits the nail on his head in one of his books when he says, past generations were marathoners. They were willing to commit to long-term or open-ended projects. But today, people tend to be sprinters. They will commit to short-term projects, but not to open-ended ones. Volunteers ask, I want to know when it will start and when it will end. I just can't commit my life to this long-term thing. A recent Geico insurance commercial pokes fun at this current reality. It's a western scene, an old western town, and the sheriff and the outlaw, they meet face to face in the center of town. And the outlaw says, you and me, partner, we meet in the center of town at high noon. And the sheriff says, wait a minute. And he reaches in his back pocket, and the outlaw reaches in his back pocket, and then they both whip out their daily planners to see if this will fit into their busy schedule. Well, no, my daughter's got a recital class at 3, and the outlaw says something, well, no, I'm tied up at 3, and, well, how about 4? And the guy says, well, we're supposed to eat beans at 4. Eventually, the announcer says, we don't need any more overscheduling, but we can all make it easier to save money on car insurance. In Luke chapter 16, Jesus says, whoever is faithful in a little will also be faithful in much. In today's Gospel of Luke chapter 10, Jesus sends these disciples on a short-term mission trip. It's a test of their faith. He sends them out with nothing in order to show them that they can trust in the faith of God to provide for them. They were faithful in a little. This was a sprint, though, but not a marathon. But Jesus wants them to be marathoners, apostles for a lifetime. There's no such thing as a short-term Christian, unless you count those people who accept Jesus on their deathbed. We call ourselves members of the Episcopal Church, but the official name and title of this church is the Domestic and Foreign Missionary Society, DFMS. It's the understanding that we, as disciples of Christ, commit ourselves to carry on Christ's work of sharing the good news of Jesus Christ of Nazareth and reconciling lost sheep back into the arms of the Good Shepherd. The Apostle Paul exhorts the faithful in Galatia with these words, you reap whatever you sow. If you sow to the Spirit, you will reap eternal life from the Spirit. So let us not grow weary in doing what is right, for we will reap at harvest time if we do not give up. In Jesus' encounter from the Gospel of John with the Samaritan woman at the well, Jesus says to her, everyone who drinks of the water I give them will never thirst again. The water I give them will become in them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life. In last week's Gospel, prior to this reading, Jesus says to several people, come and follow me. But each had personal stumbling blocks that prevented them from coming and following and committing to Jesus. We are called to be marathoners for Jesus, committing ourselves in faith, in the Spirit, to carry on Jesus' work for a lifetime. But we can do it as sprinters. If I can count all my medals, I've completed about 10 full marathons, the full 26.2 miles. But I'm not a running purist. I can't run a whole marathon. But I run it in intervals. I run a little bit, walk a little bit, run a little bit, walk a little bit. But I eventually get to the finish line. Thinking about the creation story, God created everything in 6 days, then had a day of rest. But I firmly believe that on the 8th day, God went back to work. Because I know that God's not done with me yet. As I said over and over again, the mission field is not necessarily here in this building. Now, it can be at times, but the true mission field is outside the church doors. We don't go out these doors unequipped to fulfill the mission, though. Everything we need to carry out the work of Christ, to bring about his kingdom, we get in here on a Sunday morning. The mantra of the Anglican and Episcopal Church is this: lex orandi, lex credendi, which is Latin for the law of faith is the law of belief. In simpler terms, it means what we pray is what we believe. What we do here and say here on Sunday morning is what we believe about Jesus Christ. We gather in worship. We hear the Word of God. We hear Jesus' teachings and his teachings in his apostles. And sometimes you hear a decent sermon from me. We forgive each other, and then we make ourselves ready to be worthy to be fed with the spiritual food of the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And then we end by praying, you have fed us with the spiritual food in the sacrament of his body and blood. Send us now into the world in peace, and to love and serve you with gladness and singleness of heart. With Jesus' help. Amen. We're struggling right now to understand this new apostolic age that I believe that we're in, where too many people have made the church a low priority in their life, and where too many people have never heard or experienced the love and mercy of Jesus of Nazareth. I'm reminded of the best-selling book from 1992, Men Are from Mars and Women Are from Venus, which points out the inherent differences in personalities and so on between men and women. In the same way, we are with Jesus and the world is not. Jesus' kingdom and the world are totally different. Maybe we understand Jesus, but we probably don't fully understand the world outside these doors. It's easy to tell others about Jesus' love for us, or at least it ought to be easy. The hard part is getting the world to understand and accept the free grace that Jesus offers. Every child crawls, then walks, before learning to run. If Jesus can teach and show his disciples how to carry on his work in a hostile world, I know he can teach and show us how to carry on his work in today's world. So let us get to work. Jesus isn't asking for volunteers. He's appointing you to do this work. Amen.
Amen.